And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have a newcomer into the temple, creator of the Rustwater RPG, a weird fantasy in a cursed world, specifically talking about its Quickstart as part of Zine Quest. The one and only Wayne Peacock, and since I don't have to deal with that early few seconds rule regarding language, I don't have to worry about having to call you Wayne P. Fowl or something like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, yeah, you can imagine going through elementary school, having those two syllables in my last name. I have heard a lot. Mm-hmm. So yeah, well, thank you very much for the invitation to come on.
I'll get the dumb joke out of my system. How many NBC jokes did you have to deal with growing up?
Oh, I just got to where I would just say, yeah, damn straight, I'm proud as a peacock, and that would, mm-hmm. that, I just had to develop a pretty thick skin about my last name, which it's fine. The bonus is almost nobody forgets my last name.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much, and it is definitely going to be one of those kind of things. But one of the traditions around here is opening with the humble beginnings, in a sense.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
With that in mind, I'd like you to walk me through your first introduction to role-playing games and what made it stick.
The first game I learned how to play in the winter of 1978-79. Mm-hmm. I lived in Asheville, North Carolina, and we had, like, for a couple of years there, and probably never again, we had incredible snowfalls. In one of those years, and I can't remember exactly which one, we only went to school like 4 days in February. It was amazing. And my buddy Mike Shapira had learned how to play at school, and I just went over to his house and I made up a character. My first character was a cleric. I remember fighting some skeletons, and it just blew my mind. I mean, imagining going through the little cramped dungeon and my character struggling along, with his three hirelings, which I don't think make it out of that adventure. Was great. This is AD&D, so 1979. I never went back,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was, sorry, go ahead.
I feel, in my mind, anytime I hear about hirelings, my mind just translates them to red shirts.
Mm-hmm. That was the deal, and we went through all of the terrible tropes, not only a 10-foot pole, we had we would be buying a cat in a leather bag to throw out in a room sometime. I mean, it was just terrible. I mean, it was very much a game by 11-year-olds. Okay. So,
I can't really fault that, because I've blatantly said that the first Rogue I ever played was me ripping off half of the jokes from Chuck Jones's cartoons back in the day.
Yeah. Oh man.
Including writing a spell simply called Summon Anvil, which, since I brought up Chuck Jones, I think you know exactly how that spell works.
That is awesome, man. That is awesome.
The more infamous one is the up button. It was a rune trap where
Nice.
you step on the thing, you go straight up at about 40 miles an hour for 6 seconds, and it does not matter if something's in the way.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
So imagine what happens when a dragon steps on that trap in a cave lined with adamantite.
Correct. There you go. Right.
The spell says you're going this direction and there's nothing you can do about it, and adamantite does not budge for anything. So put 2 and 2 together as to what happened to it.
Yeah, I love that combination of of cartoon physics and you're young and you're trying to use every little bit of knowledge you can to to survive. And we went through the whole Monty Hall thing, played through all that, but we were also, the other thing that we unlike a lot of other folks, we were also buying like Gangbusters and Boot Hill and Gamma World and running all that stuff along. We did, but this is back in the olden days when you would have to get a new game. We had to drive 4 hours to Atlanta to go to a game store. So,
and by extension, deal with Atlanta traffic.
Right. Yeah. I started playing, like freshman, middle school or freshman in high school. And I never really stopped. In college, I went to the University of North Carolina in Asheville, and I started a gaming club there. And what was really interesting is that we had, about 5 of the folks in that club, including Dee, who unfortunately can't be here. Hopefully she may be able to join later on. She was in that club, and she and myself and about 3 other people ended up actually getting published later on, working for TSR, or a lot of us ended up working for World of Darkness, games. And in the 90s, I played a lot of World of Darkness games, and I wrote for Hunter and Mage and Changeling back in the day. But then, although I didn't stop gaming, I had a very demanding job. I was married, had 2 kids. I just couldn't pull off the writing on top of all that other stuff. So I kind of had to let that die for a while. So
yeah, I can get that. Hold on one moment. I need to hit the BRB for 1 minute.
Okay.
are back, folks. Sorry about doing that right in the middle of things, and it appears as I was AFK. D has arrived, so welcome to the monastery, D McKinney.
Thank you.
Thank you for braving time zone hell to come along. Probably gonna have to put this in parentheses, but
yeah,
no worries. So since you are here, I may as well open with the humble tradition I did with Wayne. Walk me through your first introduction to role-playing games and what made it stick.
My introduction to role-playing games was the D&D box set in 1980, and so I played D&D for about 4 or 5 years. And that was the game that really stuck the landing for me. And then kept on playing, got into White Wolf in the 90s, and I guess some of the best games I've played lately are out of Free League. So,
yeah, I'm no stranger to Free League in this place. I'm planning on sometime later this year. I want to try and run Coriolis. I was going to do it late last year, but then second edition got announced, so I'm like, all right, let's wait and see how that's going to turn out before I do that. And before I went live, I talked about the very fascinating world that we end up seeing internationally with tabletop. So I can certainly see that. Since you both started at that amount of time, I'd like to play a little bit of word association with you two. So
okay.
I'm going to name certain games, and you tell me the first thing that comes to mind, whether it be a memory, whether it be some familiarity with it, whether it be only knowing it by name. Think of it as the nerdiest Rorschach test you will ever take.
I love it. I love it.
So, Metamorphosis Alpha.
Gamma World, because I remember having Gamma World and then finding out that where it came from, and then finally getting a hold of it.
Marvel Face Rip, aka MSH.
First superhero game ever played.
Probably would have gotten eviscerated if it weren't for the advanced rules adding in character creation.
Yeah.
Right.
And I only say that because that's basically what happened to the Indiana Jones RPG TSR made.
Wow, I'd forgotten all about that one.
Yeah, most people do.
Phase Rip still has a really strong community too. It's an amazing, yeah.
DC Heroes.
Never played it.
This is sad. I hope you don't mind something that's referential, but my buddy Daryl, who one of my good friends who passed away, and he brought that game and to us and played it, and he was just a big DC guy, so it was fun. And logarithmic progression. There you go.
Star Frontiers.
Bat people.
Monkey people, D. Your favorite.
Okay, maybe that's where I got it from. I don't know.
Well, Boot Hill was already mentioned, so I may as well bring that one up.
All right, so one of the best lines ever delivered in a game was this is, again, all apologies to the people. We were playing, we were all very young, but we had a game master who just loved being adversarial, and he basically set our characters up. And we had a gang. We were like robbing banks and doing that whole shtick, and he set us up to rob a bank in a village, and then turned out that in a town, everybody in the town was there, and they had like Gatling guns, and they just mowed our characters down and killed our characters. And one of my oldest friends turns to the game master and says, "Well, that was about as much fun as being shot in the gut with a 45." But we learned a lesson about like, we're this isn't a contest. We're actually here to like tell a story and have a good time. So sorry for the long aside.
No worries. That's the kind of thing I expect with this kind of show.
Okay.
But,
Okay.
Since you brought up World of Darkness earlier, Mage.
Oh God, the Hard Rock Cabal.
The Hard Rock Cabal.
Yeah, that was the group that we played in for over 5 years, and Phil Brucato, the line developer, played in our game, and it was fantastic. I really, the game mechanics were kludgy, and we fought against them and had to house kludgy, and we had to like, do a lot of surgery, but man, that no magic system will actually seem like magic to me unless I have that much control.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Revolutionary.
All right, let's go with an infamous one, Rifts.
Oh. One of the first times I had to kick people out of a game. There were a couple. I ran a gaming club. I started a gaming club when I was in college. D was part of that, and there were these two guys that were just immature, but they were like the biggest Rifts heads. They were like mega damage all the way, and they were just so disruptive. It was so difficult, but I had to basically go and they were edgelords. They were in their edgelord phase, and and one of those guys grew up to be a fantastic dude. So they were just young, and they were doing the edgelord thing, and I had to go and say, "You're not welcome to come back." And it was a growing up point for me too.
Yeah, I've had to do that of kicking people out of the table. Sometimes a little more literal than others.
I haven't gone that far, but I've had to do it, and it's not
being the tallest guy at the table confers certain benefits, to say the absolute least. But
D, do you remember that?
Yeah, vaguely.
Oh.
Okay.
Usually I don't have to kick people out. I just tell them, if you can stay, but you have to drink a bottle of baking soda.
Ooh.
Wow.
Nobody wants to drink that.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the point.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'd like to throw a bit of a curveball entry with Dragonlance 5th Age.
Oh, that faded. Ball. I just heard ball.
Dragonlance 5th Age. One of the two games that use the Saga system in 95.
Never played it.
I never played that. By that time we weren't playing any D&D. I was just playing other games.
Dragonlance 5th Age didn't use D&D's system. It used the Saga.
Well, system. If it came from Wizards of the Coast, I was not aware of it.
No, it was TSR. That was TSR. This was 95.
That's what I meant. I just was I was not plugged in to that.
Now, with getting into Rustwater, you describe it as weird fantasy, and that, as a descriptor, is a very wide net to have. What if you had to give somebody the elevator pitch about what weird fantasy is insofar as Rustwater, what would you say it is?
Not sword, sorcery, and castles.
Yeah, for me, I'm thinking it means there's a lot of high concept stuff that is a blending of what some people may believe are kind of like science fictional themes, more cock than Tolkien.
So something that may have been in a Weird Tales short story 100 years ago.
Right, or Clark Ashton Smith story, or more cock that vein of fantasy. Yeah,
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah, and I think when I think weird fantasy, it's China medieval. I hope I'm saying.
Oh yeah,
that right.
yeah. Oh, I love China Mill.
No.
Yeah.
Would you also say some of the fantasy leanings that Mobius has had over the years would also fit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could.
Yep.
I could show you. I have a relatively large collection. Yeah, I love that stuff.
Mobius, or even Wayne Barlow with his very surreal depiction of hell.
Yeah, absolutely. Or Richard Corbin and oh gosh, wait a minute, let me think. Von Baudet.
There you go.
Kind of more cartoony,
Yeah.
but I love Von Baudet.
Yeah, I could certainly see it. I definitely wanted to invoke like some of the comic book style stuff that I would see coming out of France, especially a lot of stuff that got its start in the heavy metal magazine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
And I suppose to a certain extent I could also invoke Slain from the 2008 anthologies.
Yeah, and can I voice a I know this is weird for a gaming podcast to talk about certain certain things that kind of set me off, but I'm like really leaning hard against the title Gonzo, because to me a lot of stuff that's Gonzo is still serious, and it invokes, when I hear people talk about like Dungeon Crawl Classics or those, and they apply Gonzo, but it's meant to be dismissive, and I really push back against that, because I really just don't think that is I think it's a pejorative term, and anyways, and also I guess because Metamorphosis Alpha, Gamma World, all that stuff is in my past. Excuse me, Planet of the Apes. That I
Oh, stop it!
I love that movie. I'm sorry.
I actually love that movie too. So,
yeah, go ahead.
Mildred, you have to know I have this thing about monkeys. It's just no monkeys.
No.
So, like,
no.
if you
don't play a CD from the Monkees.
Yeah, right.
No.
Yeah, the last train. No way.
No, it's
to Clarksville.
a primate. That's like terrifying. Okay.
Yeah, she was beaten by a monkey in some life. I don't know what it was, but
it spit on me.
It's funny. Like if we play a game like Microscope, where you come up with a palette of like things that you're going to have or not have in D's in the game. It's like if you don't get there and say monkeys are going to be in the game, she's going to nail it. It's going to axe it.
Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry.
I will admit another game that when it comes to the whole Gonzo thing, I didn't hear that term until I picked up Fantasy Craft in the late 2000s.
Oh, wow, that's a deep cut.
I love Fantasy Craft. It was a huge influence on how I approach certain things, because it is actually setting agnostic. It's actually setting flexible because of how it is designed. And one of the styles of fantasy it brought up is Gonzo fantasy. And it was not being dismissive with that term. It was specifically for those who wanted to go more over the top, something more akin to a Hindu epic or a wuxia or even a Tiancha style story.
Yeah, amen, brother. Because one of the best, most comprehensive, most lovingly crafted, and one of the settings that has kind of one of the high watermarks of artistic achievement is Glorantha.
Mhm.
And by
yeah,
pretty much
yeah.
anybody's definition who uses the word gonzo, it that would have to be applied to that setting. And yet it is it is whimsical. There is,
Games like
awe and
Glorantha and Exalted, I've always referred to as
Exalted, yeah.
as either epic or mythic fantasy.
right. And I think that's, and again, I'm sorry, I don't want to belabor the thing about gonzo, but what I think it like I said, I think it can dismiss things that I get, I I have gamers that I love and enjoy playing with, but if there's a talking duck, they're not going to play the game. And and you're like, okay, so they're talking trees and that's okay. And but the duck is right out. Anyways,
don't have them play Dragonbane then.
We did play Dragonbane,
exactly.
and we had a duck paladin, a mallard paladin.
Yeah, he was awesome too. Yeah,
and especially,
right.
I think there's a mindset that, and I've talked about this plenty of times, and I'm not trying to belabor the point about Gonzo, but this does tie into something I've talked about quite a bit. There is a mindset of that fantasy is limited to this one particular window.
Right.
The vanilla ice cream thing analogy that we talked about before we went live. And for a lot of people, that's how they view fantasy, and the reality of the situation is that fantasy is a much wider net than that. Even if we're just talking about fantasy made in the pulp era, or even made in more recent years, there's a whole lot of wiggle room in that net. And
right,
when it comes to, I think that's the reason why I have a fondness for like the Discworld universe.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, how
taking the piss.
Yeah, and what is so beautiful about Discworld is, like, if you've read the book Going Postal, and actually the miniseries was surprisingly good too.
Which miniseries? There's several Discworld miniseries.
The Going Postal one was extremely well done, and it's absurd, but what he is able to do is to introduce an absurd concept, and then as you're exposed to it and you kind of take it in, he can then elevate it to something that I don't want to oversell it, but it can be a near sublime experience where he touches upon artistry and what it is to tell a story, what it is to communicate with other human beings. It's amazing what he's able to pull off, and I believe if it wasn't for that joyful Gonzo, it wouldn't actually stick the landing. So anyways,
we've seen plenty who try to parody like fantasy tropes, but you have to be a fan in order to properly take the piss out of them like that.
Yeah.
But a lot of within Rustwater, a lot of the crunch of it is very much drawing upon the Black Hack family. And I know you cited Black Sword Hack, which is a very Moorcock take on the concept, and I'm using the Black Hack family as a kind of catch-all for a lot of this. What was your first introduction to that particular system, and what made you want to use that as the basis for Rustwater?
Dee, I know I've been talking.
Yeah, go right ahead. No, go right ahead. I'll jump back in whenever there's a good time.
So quite honestly, I bought the box set of Black Hack completely like on a whim. I saw the box set with the little silver, hand on the cover, and I thought, and I opened it up and I looked in there and I read the first couple pages of the game, and I saw how concisely he had nailed like the tropes of the 4 archetypal classes, and yet how much legs it actually had. And I bought it, and then I ran a series of games with it, usually using like OSE modules, which were plentiful and great. And I just loved it. It just worked so well at the table. No mechanics are perfect, but the roll under mechanic and having the player facing dice rolls where they actually where the player would know what they needed to roll. I didn't have to do a lot of explanation. We could have a little conversation about if there needed a roll need to be made, and then they would know what they would need and they would roll the dice and we moved on. I really enjoyed that. And then when Fléau came out, and I ran a couple of games of Fléau and then Black Sword Hack, and I don't know if that's the correct order that they were produced or not, honestly, but by Kobayashi, both of those. And meanwhile, we were working on Rustwater, and we had already gone through 2 systems, and D and a lot of the other players had just bounced off the two previous systems that we tried to bring the world to life with. I think I said, let's just try this, we just made bare bones, rules and just played an adventure, and D got it and was like playing, and the game system got out of the way. And D, I'm sorry, you once you finish.
No, I think that's accurate, because for me, a system has to support it. The system has to support the world. For me, the storytelling and the world and the characters are central. But unless you have a strong system that fits that vision, it's not going to work. And again, we had tried a couple of very good systems. They just didn't fit. But this one, it clicked. It clicked right away.
Yeah, I can certainly get that. The only thing I've ever house ruled when it comes to the Black Hack is integrating some aspects of the victory point setup from Fading Suns, just because I'm fond of that approach.
I love Fading Suns.
I would love to hear more about that.
The long and short, I'll be brief on it. The long and short of it is, I've called Fading Suns' victory point system D20 Blackjack, because it is a roll under system, but rolling just the absolute lowest is not exactly what you want, because the higher the number you roll, the more victory points you get, i.e. the better the success that you have. So a natural 1 is a success, but it's the bare minimum. What you want is to get as close to the target number without going over. Much like how in Blackjack, you're trying to get as close to 21 without busting.
Right.
That's really interesting. I like that.
Yeah.
The big change we had to make, and this is why I say that we are a riff on the Black Sword Hack. It's because we use a lot of the same mechanics, but where the game fell down for us is that we have a bunch of really, we don't really have like a fighter and a wizard and a thief. They, the classes, or what do you want to call them? The archetypes for the setting are a little bit strange and off, and
because they're built to fit Rustwater and not a
correct.
Correct. Yes.
Correct.
That's correct.
And so the standard 6 stats just really weren't working. And then I tried to graft on like a skill system, and then that just got way too complex. Yeah. And once again, I love the player facing mechanics. That is where my heart is right now. If I don't, if I don't have to roll a die as a game master, if I am merely constructing situations, playing the NPCs, adjudicating the rules, and and paying attention to what the characters are doing, then that's my sweet spot. So although it was really hard for me to put the dice down several years ago when I made the transit, when I stopped playing as many games where the game master rolls dice, I suddenly realized, oh, you know what? I have a lot more cycles, now. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm an IT guy. So I've like freed up a lot of memories.
You're not the first or last IT guy I've had in the monastery.
Yeah, right. So for me, it's like I can free up a lot of like system memory, instead of me having to touch those dice, I can concentrate more on other things, which I think are more important. And again,
are you trying to avoid a ID10T moment?
Yeah. Right. EBKS, you know what that is? Error between keyboard and C.
I've usually heard it keyboard and chair, but close enough.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we struggled with it for a while, and then finally, we have about 12 archetypes, and Dee and I just sat down and we're like, okay, let's just write down frickin' words that describe these 12 characters. And we wrote all the words down, and we consolidated and consolidated.
Sticky poster notes, yeah.
And there's still, and this is what, I know some people may be turned off by this, but instead of 6 stats, there are actually 15 that are grouped into 3 broad categories.
And what I see when I see the attribute list is something that I've seen in games like Amp Year 1 or in the network system, which is stuff like Wandering Heroes of Ogre Gate or Sartorius. And that is, instead of doing the attribute skill relationship, just having a small collection, or not small, like medium-sized collection of skills.
Right.
They're in broad categories, but still they're a collection of what would be skills in other games.
And we didn't I think one of the things that happens is that once you're cognizant of systems, sometimes that idea of the system begins to inform your game design a little too much. And sometimes you just need to just focus on what is actually occurring at the table. So we ran, so some of our skills seem like attributes or characteristics. Some of them seem like very discrete skills. But what Dee and I did for about a year was just run games, and I literally just took tally marks next to every time somebody made a roll. And I was thinking, okay, so if we look at this and there's like a couple of these that just are never getting rolls, then we're getting rid of them. Because my nature was I wanted to like pare these down as much as I could. Because I this may be anathema to some people, but I hate huge skill lists. I don't either. I have been very vocal about how the absurdly long skill list of a bunch of games in the 90s outright traumatized me. Especially every single game that Fantasy Games Unlimited ever made. And I have made Iron
Crown Enterprises? Ooh.
I like some aspects of Rollmaster, but I will admit this. Rollmaster, and by extension MERP, needed a more unifying voice. It was still in that collection of subsystems mindset, and Against the Dark Master pretty much handles that, but Shadowrun in particular was one of my big whipping boys as far as absurdly long skill lists. A lot of the more simulation heavy games where I have to ask the question, why is running and jumping separate skills?
Right. Yeah. How many times are you going to have a character who's really good at like running or really good at athletics and not great at acrobatics, or whatever,
How many athletes you know are good? Are good? If someone's really good at running, aren't they going to be decent at jumping?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Like if some, like when I think about that, and I think about my own background with athletics, a lot of that skill separation doesn't make sense. It might make sense if I was looking at it from the perspective maybe a programmer, but even that's a stretch.
Right. Yeah. It's yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
But the approach I've always taken is I don't, obviously having everything down to 6 ability scores, that's swinging the pendulum too far the other way. But having it that one skill is for this one specific thing and nothing else, I think is too far the other way.
Correct.
Because there are going to be more actions than skills that you can make for them. So eventually it's going to have to be a case where you got to wing it.
Well, yeah, it's like that, like the poor character in 3.5 D&D that maxed out ropies.
Yeah.
How many times is that going to shine?
In my entire time playing 3.0 and 3.5 and Pathfinder, and this is going all the way back to 2001. Use rope got used. Yeah. A grand total of 8 times.
Yeah,
that is 8 times probably over 25 plus years of one shots, full campaigns, games I wasn't running, games I was running.
Yeah.
And it only got used that many times, and all of them in like 2002.
Yeah.
It didn't take long before we blew up the skill list and just folded in a lot of skills anyways.
Right.
And well, with my own project, I've only got 7 skills.
Right. So I fully expect some people to like that may have questions about the skills we chose. Mm-hmm. All I can say is that we actually ran a lot of play tests, and that's what we came up with as what we needed to differentiate the different characters.
I'm guessing that one of the rules that you had is that if a skill was only being used very situationally, it was probably getting folded into another skill.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure there were some that we deleted because that original list, I'm pretty sure D was over 20 skills, and we narrowed it down over time just by playing.
Yeah.
So okay, I've lost the thread. What next question, I guess.
So I think one of the next thing is that when I look at the character sheets, I see that there's benefits for the profession, whether it be Harbinger, whether it be Profiteer Captain, and so on. But you also have the concept of knacks and talents. Now,
right.
With knacks, I get the vibe of them being like specializations of the skill list. You've either got it or you don't. With talents, is it a case where each profession has a list of associated talents? Is it a case where talents are in a unified list? How do you plan on approaching that?
So the profession, you're correct in that they are basically talents that are limited to that profession. Okay. And a talent is just like, feat, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And the talents are generic. And so, and again, we mulled over whether to have a, quote, classless, and we use the word archetype, but whatever.
I use archetype. It's a nice little medium between classes and classless.
Right. And but I don't know, D, you might have different thoughts about this, but to me, we had such strong characters in mind and these archetypes that we wanted to build a kind of medium system where you could go and play this game for I don't know, 8, 20, sessions and probably have told that story.
Hmm.
And then jump back in and play something that is unique. So we decided to stick with the idea of archetypes just because we had such a strong had such strong identities in our minds.
Mhm.
And I'll shut up. Dee, you need to
And-
talk. I'm sorry.
Can you kind of repeat the question for me? I'm a little lost.
What I was mainly when it comes to talents, I was mainly trying to figure out is if it's a case of there's a group of talents that are associated with each profession, or if there's like a whole, or if you guys have plans for like a whole section of just talents.
Okay, so the answer is yes to both. There are talents that are recommended for each archetype. However, there are also a lot of general talents that people can pick from. When we made the character rules, which by the way are not in the Quickstart, they're in the full version. We have a lot of talents to pick from, but we have in the character creation section for example, the Profiteer Captain. There's a couple that we suggest that Profiteer Captain have. But we wanted to also give that choice. It's always, I think, in our game, there's a lot of places where we say you can roll if you want, or you can just choose, or you can make up your own. I've had a lot of people sit down at the table and say, I don't really see anything here that grabs me, but I have this idea, ... And we just let them run with that. On the other hand, I have a player who sits down and says, I just want to be random, and that will give me some chance to kind of stretch myself. So we try to leave it flexible for them, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can certainly get that. And to that end, when it comes to Nax, because of the fact that it was shown as bullet points, is it a case of if the action you're taking applies to a given knack that you just get advantage on that roll?
Correct.
Yes, but you also, if I think this is the case that what Wayne and I were trying to do is you need to work that in narratively. Tell us why that knack is going to work for you.
Mm-hmm.
And along with your profession and your character's background, your knacks also they define what your character is good at, which also means when they don't need to roll. So we tried to stress that in the full rules where you don't roll to just roll. I believe I'd rather have rolls be an exciting dramatic part. We're using a D20, so it's going to be kind of swingy, and I believe in there's two ways to approach that. Either you're rolling all the time, or you're not rolling all the time, which to me makes it's a much more dramatic event. So again, I believe, and we state in the rules that if your character, if you were born among the the people who live on the canals, you don't need to make a roll to row your damn boat down a canal. You don't need to make a roll to know that that the canal that it on this area of the canals in the seedy part of the city is where they dump a lot of bodies. It's just it is also your so it also just contributes to the things your character should just be able to do. But knacks are by definition, if you read through them, they're very, very narrow, whereas the attributes are pretty broad.
Yeah, I liken it to skills versus skill specializations. Like someone can be good at fighting, but they're even better with a axe or with a polearm, for instance. That's the vibe that I'm getting from how you're describing that.
Yeah, that's true. And also, like, if a lot of knacks are assigned by your character's background. So even if your character is a scholarly person who in his current career is more academic. If you grew up, herding sheep, you probably have a knack that's called, sheep herder. So, if for some reason you end up in that kind of a situation, you understand.
You
that
just do it.
feeling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just do it.
Yeah, and I can certainly get that. Now, with this current Kickstarter, which congratulations on getting to on getting way past your goal beyond the initial amount with plenty of time to go.
Yeah, we're pretty chuffed.
Yeah.
We're very happy.
Yeah, I believe this is this particular thing is for a print run. It is currently available on Drive-Thru-RPG.
Correct. And we it's available as a PDF on Drive-Thru-RPG.
Mm-hmm.
For the same price as buying the PDF through the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When the final Kickstarter version will be slightly different, not tremendously different, but we're going to add in. We commissioned a friend of mine, the artist that goes by the name Wilderwim, to do a bigger map of Gottlieb, our main city.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to replace the character sheet that's in the current version with that map, because we realize we didn't put the character creation rules in there, and you can download the you'll be able to download the pre-gens and have a character sheet, anyway. So we just thought that would be a nice add-on for the Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can certainly get that. And now with that in mind, when developing the project, were there any things that you can think of that were in there early on, but as you did playtesting, as you refined it, ended up getting phased out just because it didn't fit the goal?
I have some,
Yes.
but I'll let you.
Go ahead.
Well, originally we had like the bog standard classes.
Mm-hmm.
We had like, fighter, wizard, thief, cleric, whatever. And as we developed the world, we realized that those things were diluting the setting. And so, after, it's a thing, it still it was kind of a hard decision at first to jettison that, but then we just decided, the people who love this are going to love the setting, and we need to lean into that.
Lean on that setting, yeah. So we started reworking those archetypes, and I'm just going to talk about one of my favorites. I'll talk about two of my favorites. One of my favorites is the Fusilier, because we wanted someone who could fight with a pistol or a sword, but also sort of had a concept of natural philosophy, and was also very, very thoughtful and thinking, and leans on game theory to plan. So we work that in. And then there's also the Custodes, who has evolved from being the Custodes works for a group of people called the Cenotaph. The Cenotaph, I don't mean to be getting ahead of ourselves as far as the world, but the Cenotaph is made up of people who are blind, and they are the only people who can actually, quote unquote, read. And that's simply because they cannot see the pages, they cannot see the words on the pages. The Cenotaph hires the Custodes, who travel around and gather books and information that they can't themselves look at it, except under extremely limited circumstances, or else it will be destroyed. And we feel like that character archetype is really developed from just sort of a plain old agent of a bunch of monastic scholars into sort of a power on their own. Because I think if you look at the character archetypes, each one of them has something so singular and unique about them that it makes them essential to playing in this world. The Tinker Witch talks to machines. the Tovanar have the most powerful magic of anyone in the world, but they also run the greatest risk of it spilling over and doing bad things. The Custodes can put on a blindfold and temporarily, very briefly, read a page with their hands, and so on and so forth. So all of our archetypes have something unique about them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not just mage, thief, fighter.
Mm-hmm. Which I'm perfectly fine with, since
Mm-hmm.
when the whole mage thief fighter, and when you're dealing with a particular setting, sometimes it ends up creating a bit of conflict. Like I remember having my frustrations with that particular triangle in something like, say, Conan.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because well, let's look at Conan himself. Yes, he's a barbarian, but he doesn't really have the same kit as what people would expect the barbarian to solely focus on.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's funny how little the Conan character has to do with the classic barbarian class in D&D, which is, everybody assumes. I remember playing barbarian in D&D without having read Conan. And then my great friend Mike, the guy who taught me how to play, he loaned me the Conan books, and I was like, holy crap, I like this guy is not like that at all. He's super smart. He speaks like 5 languages. He's been a thief and a pirate, and I'm just like, what? So yeah, sorry.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I do think some of that is a bit of a lingering artifact from the wargaming origins of role-playing games, where, because of the fact that you're managing whole armies, individual units, aside from what I call the big dick units, whether that be armor in a World War II game, or the artillery stuff in a pike and shot game, the ones that cost the more points, everything else has to be laser focused on one particular thing. But
I'm sorry.
When you look at pulp characters as an example, that's not really how it works.
Well, I was also going to say that no shade whatsoever on fighter, magic user, thief. Mm-hmm. We just got through playing a Dragonbane campaign. I played just a regular magic user and had a wonderful time.
Yeah, I did a brief video on Dragonbane earlier, and I'd said, from a dollar value portion, Dragonbane is one of the better ways to introduce people to role playing.
Absolutely, that and Monster of the Week.
Yeah, I specifically brought up Dragonbane because the core set's like $50, and you're getting a whole adventure path out of the gate, as well as the solo option.
Right.
Yeah, no kidding. Incredible value. Mm-hmm. Incredible value.
And
just a really good time.
That, and like I said, Duck Knights. Although
Correct.
I swear I've seen the artists in Dragonbane's work before. I just can't remember where, and that's going to drive me crazy. But with that in mind, what do you guys have planned as far as a release window for the print run of Rustwater? At least of the Rustwater Kickstart.
The core, the Kickstarter, or the core game?
The core game is another end entirely, since that's not what's being crowdfunded. Though we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Gotcha. Sure. We are going to fulfill by August, at the latest. The game itself is ready to be printed. It's laid out, but we want to make sure that we give our friend and artist Wilder Whim a chance to properly get the maps done. But yeah, as soon as that's finished, I'm looking at our calendar right now in case you're wondering what I'm doing, and that is really what our goal is, into summer at the very latest. Maybe even a tad sooner. We'll see.
Yeah, I can certainly get that, and I will definitely be looking forward to seeing how it develops, both with the quick start and the full thing. But
yeah,
with that said, oh, go ahead.
No, go. No, never mind. That's right.
I do want to sincerely thank you both for taking the time out of your schedule to come all the way to my monastery and enjoy the madness that happens around here.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime
Sure.
you see fit to return, the door is always open. As I often say around here... Oh, go ahead.
I really like the cocktail bar. The theming is quite good, but they made all their own mixers, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah. As I always say around here, drinking is not mandatory, but it is encouraged.
Correct. Amen.
And of course, a sincere thanks goes out to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there will be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here, on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.
Bye.
Warning comes in.